base brush here, and this is the Army Painter. Does it have a name? Yes, the product code 7008. So you can see it's actually a bit bigger. It's definitely much longer, so hopefully will hold a bit more paint. That's good because I was planning on cracking out my giant old school dry brush to get the paint on the go. But this is what I would normally use for things like contrast and undercoat. So we will give this paintbrush a go because it comes in the box. And on to our painting victims. I have printed out... That's not fair. I had a bunch of Brute Fun Lizardman players paint printed out already with some 3D printed bases from Asgard Rising. This was when I was doing my support test, so there's a couple of bits on the detail that aren't quite right. I think most of these are perfect, but there's a couple with bits of tail missing where I missed off their first supports. Anyway, I figured that with the insane amount of detail, I would be able to kind of make the most of these speed paints. Oh, but I unfortunately do have a dog, and that has clearly got attached there. So what I have used, there we go, missing bit of a tail. Otherwise the model's perfect, but I figured for the purposes of trying out these speed paints, this would work a treat. Now I've got a bunch of these different Lizardman dudes. Now there's a couple of other models as well, because I had them kicking around and I love them. We've got 10 paints to try out. We've got 11 models. I just had to get some paint on a couple of these. So this is the Torchlight Orc team that came out this month on their tribes, and I love them. So I want to do a couple of armor tests on these bad boys. We've got 9 skinks, 10 paints, 2 orcs, and then because we've got a cool bone color, I wanted to give it a go on one of the mummies that I was going to use for my College of Death team. And this is from MG Picks. This is from the most recent Kickstarter and available on my mini factory. Got a whole undead team. I thought, actually, you know what? Bone color could be really good to get that kind of mummy coloring on there. I thought it'd be a decent place to start. So, talking of decent places to start, I have primed all of these in Games Workshop Wraithbone. I wanted to just give the speed paint the best shot possible. If it works out fine, at some point I have no doubt I'll run out and start using just the kind of auto spray white that we normally use. So yeah, I'll tell you what, let's get some paint on the models. So the first one we're going to try is Orc Skin. It was just the first in the pot. Now these all have, you can hear, mixing balls already inside them, so a little round metal ball that actually helps make sure the paint is nice and mixed up. So this should be quite an effective way of doing it. Now I'm going to use my absolutely pro level painter's plate here, which is in no way or could you ever accuse me of having used the back of a shelf for this, but it works, I'm just saying. So we are going to use our Army Painter brush, and we are going to use it and do it undiluted. Now, I don't know if I've used enough paint here, but what we're going to do is we're going to do the whole one thick coat approach and see how we do. I'm going to dab into the areas that you can't see well first. This is something that I do if I'm using the contrast paints. Brush is fine. This is a lot thinner than the Games Workshop contrast paints. It feels weird. I do not like this brush, but it could just Lord Blue, and as you can see, I've managed to get it all over my hands, all over the plate. So one to watch out for. If you're painting as quickly as I am, you are going to make a mess. Right, next up we have and another paint. I tell you what, we've done well with the bright colours so far, so let's move on to Zealot Yellow. Dramatic skink model with 2 paints left to go. So we are going to use the Gravelord Grey on this dude. Now, I really am hoping that this turns out nicely, because a quick, easy way to paint like a dark grey or a black is just really important. Now, the contrast from Games Workshop does an okay job of it. It'll be fun to see if this is going to save me a whole load of time. In quite a lot of the pallid bone. Now, it's doing a great job, and the coverage is fine. It's quite thin, so you kind of have to load up your brush, but that might come back to bite me. You can see we've got a lot of flow and a lot of deep recess kind of pooling. So I don't know how it's going to turn out. Now, one thing I did do is, as I had to reload for like the 3rd time because I didn't want to use too much, I just dropped the paint directly on the model from the dropper and then used my brush to spread it around. I am almost certain that that is a bad technique and that you shouldn't do it, but I really just wanted to give it a go. So that covers all of our 10 paints. So what we're going to do is we are going to let them dry up for a bit and then come back and see which our favourites are, and then chuck a bit more on a couple of orcs. Okay, so I went away and made a cup of tea, and the sun has come around and come out, so that's a nice thing. So, all in all, probably left these paints, I don't know, 15 minutes to dry, and they're done. So let's have a look at the paints as we go along. So this was the green paint, this was orc skin, and I've got to say that the overall vibe is really nice. The coverage is really good too. Now, it's quite bright, it's quite a solid green. Do I have another green? Of course I have another green. I paint green all the time. So this is some kind of other green that I've used. And you can see that this is nice and bright to go alongside it, which I'm a big fan of. So we will be using this for the skin of our orcs. And the coverage is really good. You can see, can we get this detail on the camera? No, too close to the camera is what I was trying to say. But no, nice detail, nice shading. And actually the highlights are really good. So if I was going to use this for the skin, I'd be very happy with that. Like, very good. And the cool thing about it is because it does leave little patches of like, just little tiny patches where it's a little bit uneven. It works really well for natural bits. So skin works great. We'll be using this for the orcs. And even if I was going to use it for this uniform here, I think that would be perfectly acceptable, is what I was going to say, but I think it would work well. Now, we're going to try a little thing just because I am a cowboy, and I wonder what happens if you put one paint over another paint. So the great thing about these lizards here is that you've got uniform with little bits of, don't want too much, I guess. Let's see if we can paint the stripe on the uniform. Now, orange over green, what are you going to get? Brown. So let's see if we can get a little brown streak on there. And we'll do the same on t'other side. And I don't know, we'll come back to it a little bit later and see what effect it has. But this at least kind of gives a bit of like layering on it, and we'll put a bit on there as well to get some team colors on the go. And we'll come back to it and see what the final effect is. Now, I like this. The green is solid. It is probably too bright to be a skin color for orcs, but we're going to give it a go anyway. So on to High Lord Blue. So this was quite a dense paint, had a lot of pigment in it. And I did a bit of a bad job using it, so it got a bit patchy in places. Interesting, I felt like this paint went on just fine. I felt like it was quite thick, it went on quite nice, got decent coverage, but clearly I went a bit light on the edges in some places, or maybe I just kind of used my hand and moved over it a little bit. But again, coverage is really decent. The shading and the kind of the difference between the high points and the low points for this one, not as good as the green. Now, I am obviously predetermined to like green because of the colour, because of my name, Ben Greenman, because of the Green Bay Packers. Apparently green is just my jam. And also tanks. I love tanks, and they're often green. So blue on this guy. The headrest bits come out quite nicely. You get a nice bit of variation. Maybe I went a little bit thick with the paint, and this is perfectly fine. And again, if you're going to use this for the uniform, you want to be careful that it's not too pooly. And by that, I'm over accentuating the way of pronouncing the word pool, because I don't want to be pulley. But yeah, if it pulls too much, it will get a little bit flat, and I think that's what we're getting here. Overall, though, and you can see with like the scales and stuff, it does a good job. And for the, I mean, let's face it, guys, I don't know, 30 seconds of effort I put into painting this model, if I wanted to just go chuck on some details now, this would be good as gold. So Hive Dweller purple, again dried out quite thick, similarly to the blue, and it is, when I was painting it on, I was kind of getting retro Tyranid kind of vibes, and it's all right, it's fine. And I think this is kind of a good angle to take it at, because you can see the kind of variations and where it's filtered down. And you can see it's kind of left peaks of quite brightness. Oh, actually, I really like the effect it's had on the shorts here. Like, this is... Can we get it any... No, can't get it any... Fix the camera focus point, you see. That was a mistake. Alright, it's done a pretty decent job. It's a dark purple. I wonder if actually... I wonder if maybe thinning it down would help. But actually, as I do this, I quite like the effect. It's a dark purple, sure. This would actually, if you're looking to paint up Dark Elves and you survived building them, most of its armour and fabric, and actually giving them a solid coat of purple like this would really set your team apart. And it does look, see, this is interesting. We're starting to see this as the speed. It does look like someone has kind of gone with a little dry brush of white over the top and picked out the most kind of... that's really interesting to see. Okay, we're starting to see it happen. And again on the headrest. Okay, it's a dark paint, but the highlights work and it looks quite nice. Alright, this one I like. So this is Fire Giant Orange over a skink that looks awfully like it's been caught in the act. Dude, this is... yeah, this is really nice. Okay, look at the coverage. The coverage is brilliant. And it does a great job of going from light to dark. Now, my initial... no, it's not. This is really nice. This is really nice. This is much better than expected. As an orange, it's not bright, okay? It doesn't look like the Games Workshop orange just chucked on stuff. Actually, I don't know. This is nice. This leaves a much better effect than me just painting orange on there. Alright, I'm impressed. This is good. This is really good. If you want to do a... like a fire lizard team, or I don't know when you'd use orange. This would work if you... This is difficult. Orange is a spot colour in most cases, right? Green, blue, yeah, great. Chuck it on. This is my uniform. Purple, this is my uniform. Orange, very rarely the uniform. But if you wanted to do like fire lizards, or you wanted to do orange uniform, I mean, look at the shading here in the recesses of the shorts. That has come out really nicely. Okay, yeah, really impressed. And then we'll get a little look at the top there on the headdress. Now, we're painting the whole models orange. You probably shouldn't paint the whole models orange. You want to paint just the areas you want to paint. But actually, I did it to just kind of get the most of all the detail. Yeah, all right. Fire Giant orange, great job. And Zealot yellow, also pretty good. Now, not as good, I don't think, but... And I did a bit of a patchy job. So when we're painting this on, I did think, oh, the pooling is going to be a bit bad, and we might have a little bit of issue. But you know what? That is a yellow skink. You put it anywhere you want. That dude is yellow. I sent a picture of this group to the local club, and they were like, "Oh, skittle lizards." It's like, thanks, Rich. But yeah, it's come out really nicely. So shading yellow is really difficult, and if you go darker for yellow, it turns into an orange or a brown, which is exactly how the shading works on this model here. So it gives a nice yellow color. The shading is a little bit dubious. I think the pooling is a bit too strong. But as far as yellow goes, for one coat, this does an excellent job. So if you are going to be quickly painting up a yellow Marines force, what are they called? Imperial Fists. Yeah, this, honestly, this is going to do the job in no time. In fact, do we promote... Yes, we do. We're going to paint one of our orcs in this yellow because I want to see how it works for armor. And we're going to paint the other orc in maybe... Well, we'll find out a different color. Anyway, yellow, not bad at all. And onwards to the bloodiest of reds. We've got blood red here. And again, when we painted this on, the coverage was really good. This was kind of like, okay, this one feels really good. And if you look at the finish, it is a really solid finish. This, I'm probably a little bit smitten by this because it just smacks of 1990s Games Workshop. Like, you'd be surprised. Okay, now I've announced my love of the color green, but I was an ardent Blood Angels fan growing up. And Red Marines were life for me. Mephiston was just awesome. Tycho with his golden half face mask, dude, what a lad. You know, F in chat, respects to him. This is a great bit of coverage. The shading is okay. It's dark-ish. This feels like a flatter color than the others, but the coverage is really, really solid. Now, this is a bit dark, I think, and when put to kind of compare with the blue and the purple, it has less peaks and troughs, but solid coverage, and you are pre-shaded. The highlight is a little bit low, but the pre-shading is okay. And you can see there on the short, the shading isn't as stark as perhaps we would want, but this red is a solid job, and as far as you go for Blood Angels or something like that, yeah, this is a good one. Next up, we've got hardened leather. So this is dried out, really nice, and I think gives probably one of the smoothest coverages, I should probably say, of all of these paint schemes. Now, again, along with the red, it is a bit flat, but if you're looking for a yellowy Dunkelgelb kind of brown, then it does a great job. And yeah, I mean, hardened leather is probably about right. If you're using this for, you know, medieval tunics, trousers, for, you know, a bland part of the paint scheme for a Blood Bowl team. So I'm thinking like humans, if you want to just paint the trousers a brown color because it is the least offensive. I mean, if you've ever watched the channel, you'll know that I'm a huge fan of Army Painter Leather Brown spray. This is different than Leather Brown, the spray paint, which is the best paint of all time. But this does a pretty good job. It's a bit flat. It picks out all the details, though. I think the shorts test, it passes. If this was going to be our uniform color, it would be fine. It's done a pretty decent job on the flesh, and I think getting a shot of the detail on the top there, it does exactly what you want it to do. It picks it out. I think, again, it's a bit flat. The peaks and troughs are not as high as perhaps you'd want, but a little dry brush, you know, with a bit of white or something like that will be fine. And as you pick out the details, it does a really solid job. And the coverage was beautiful. It took maybe 7 seconds to paint this dude. And with a bit of picking out stuff, he's probably fine for the tabletop. And Crusader skin. So this was the one I was worried about as we were painting it on. And this is Crusader skin. So this is supposed to be light human skin tone. How have we done here? Does it look like human skin tone? I am a very pale human. I have very pale human flesh. This guy, yeah, all right, okay, it does get that kind of Kislev flesh kind of texture to it. It's not bad. It's quite soft. It is quite patchy, and the shading is quite harsh. And I don't know if that's because I put too much on. So, if I was going to use this as a human face paint, words, Ben. Yeah, if I was going to use this as a skin tone for a human team, I would be a bit nervous to put too much on. I guess, but I mean, if you've got a lot of flesh to paint, you know, this would probably do a great job on the Khorne team, like Khorne Marauders. If you've got a bunch of topless madmen to paint on, you chuck this on there, and actually, as long as the pooling isn't too bad, it's fine. This is probably my least favourite of the paints, but let's face it, some skin tones are quite challenging to do. The blotchiness almost works in the favour of the fact that it is a bit skin-like, he says, seeing himself on camera looking pale and blotchy. Yeah, I don't know. This one is probably fine. I don't know if it's as good as just kind of using... Yeah, it is. This is probably better than just using a single pot of paint from Games Workshop. Yeah, alright. I've convinced myself that this is not too bad. It does a good job of picking out the details, and that's pretty nice. Good to watch for the pooling and the blotchiness. Gravelord Grey is up next, and I was worried about this one too, because it felt a bit patchy. Yeah, it looks like a watercolour. Now, let's ignore the bottom half. I went heavy on the top half, and it kind of went lighter as the model went down because I ran out of paint and didn't want to put any more out. Let's start with the headdress and work our way down. So let's see if we can get this actually in focus. Yeah, it's done a good job. It looks grainy. It looks washed out. As a skin tone, as a skink skin tone, the grey actually looks alright. It's nice and smooth. Like this here. Let's get the point on the go. This here is actually really, really smooth. And as it goes down, probably because I got a bit frantic or didn't have as much paint left on my brush, it didn't kind of pool as nicely and get that coverage. Black was going to be the other colour that I used on the armour of the orcs. This isn't black, this is definitely grey, and that's fine because it says grey on the tin. So that's my fault for getting a bit excited. I do think I want to give this another test with a nice deep coverage. Shading's okay. The highest points are a bit flat, and it's a little bit patchy. So, alright, we'll do black. And what was the other colour that we said we'd do? Was it yellow? Black and yellow are the two test paints that we'll use for our orc armour. And lastly, Pallid Bone, and some of it was just flipping straight out of the tub. I just used the dropper to chuck it on there, which is bad technique. As Phil Collins said, do as I say, don't do as I do. Great song. Retro. Love it. Right. This is alright. So I used this model and I used this paint because I thought, cool, how would I, of the olden days, painted my mummies? I would use bleach bone and some kind of chestnut ink is probably what I would have done. This looks exactly like I had painted it with bleach bone and then chucked chestnut ink. To the extent where there's either, yeah, there's a couple of wet patches still, so because I did go quite heavy and this was the last model that I painted. I like this. This finish is really good. Oh, we got some print rings. That's on me. That's on me. I thought we'd done really well. I 3D printed all these models and I haven't seen that many print rings, but we've got one. Oh, it's so close. Anyway, coverage is great. Shading's really good. This is exactly right. Yeah, this is not amazing, but this will do exactly what you want. Exactly out the pot. It's not wowing me, but this is delivering exactly as expected. So yeah, this is top notch. Yep, good job. What do we call it? What is it called? That's High Dweller Purple. Pallid Bone. Okay, this is a paint that is going to come in handy a lot. Okay, this is going to do the business, and I am on board with this. Okay, so it's time to do our orcs. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to paint on the orc skin first. Let that dry. scar and it still looks muddy. However, they're orcs, they're supposed to be dirty, and I'm fine with it. So we've got two. We're going to do one with the grey and one with the yellow. This guy is going to be yellow. This guy is going to be grey. So let's get started. Okay, so here is the first of my orcs. So what have we done? We've used orc skin on the orc skin. There you go, imagine that. Then we used the leather, worn leather, hardened leather on the loincloth area. Now it's pulled up a bit more than I was hoping it would at the bottom there, but it's fine. This is a speed paint, so we're trying to paint it rather speedily. And then I used the grey. So the grey is the thing I was most excited for. So Gravelord Grey, because I was hoping it would just speed up painting dark colour schemes. It didn't work brilliantly on the skink, so I thought we'd bust it out on the armour, and it's not bad. It's okay. You know, it's done a reasonable job, and it works kind of nicely as an armour. I actually think that over a silver spray coat, this would be really, really nice. And you can see at the bottom here, where it's starting to kind of come away at the top to give a nice highlight. It almost does look like worn metal. So I do like that. Now I've also used the grey on the base to kind of give a, oh dear, a dungeon bowl kind of vibe. And I've quickly gone around the back, the sides of the base with Abaddon Black. Is that what it's called now? It is, yeah. Chaos Black for you old school players. So there's a ton more to do on this model, and one thing you know, that didn't pan out as well as I'd hoped is that I did go around the edges. So you'll see there's some points like here where the brown is mixed in with the grey. Now I tried, as the brown was done, to kind of patch in with white, with Games Workshop white, to kind of give a bit of a delineation. It was okay, but 3 paints basically and a bit of a touch up of white, and that's not a bad scheme. I mean, that's more painted than it would have been beforehand. The other model, now there's bits of it where it's still drying in the center where it's pulled up quite nicely, but this is I used the yellow on this, and again I did some patching up. Then I went and chucked the grey on the base there, but while the yellow was still kind of wet, I kind of wanted to try out how it would mix in. It's gone all right, but anyway, let's look at the top coat. Let's look at the yellow. It's worked out pretty well. It is a little patchy. This is definitely a speed paint. That green has come out nicely. It's not a brilliant orc skin colour, but it does a beautiful job of being green. Now this green and yellow is kind of where I live, as you guys will know, but I haven't used Agrax on this dude at all. So we've got leather brown in the middle. We've got the yellow all over the place on the armour. It's pulled up nicely and created some decent shading there for the kind of orange recesses. So it's kind of like an orangey yellow. Painting yellow can be a pain. So actually this paint, doing this so quickly and so easily, is going to be very useful. Now what I would probably do is, if you are going to use this as a base coat for yellow armor, at least dry brush it with the yellow on top, or just do the edge highlighting for yellow. But it's put together a very solid and very bright paint. scheme. So actually, I'm impressed. I'm impressed. The yellow mixed with the black to create a brown on the base, and it's fine. I was a bit too eager. I thought, oh, grey might work for stone and dungeons, and it actually does. I quite like the effect, but it's all right. And there you have it, speed paints from Army Painter. And I tell you what, the green is the perfect colour for green screens. So you can see that the orc's face is invisible. That's hilarious. Okay, well, I like this. This is good. Let's use this model to wave around instead. Some of these paints are brilliant. Some of them are a little bit lackluster. But I've got to be honest with you, all of them are useful. Now, contrast and speed paint, they are tricky because they will blend. They will splash over. And if you want to paint a model just using speed paints, you therefore have to go back and tidy up bits. So, you know, when I painted these orcs, I had to go and re-white the bits where the orc skin had gone over onto the armor, and I didn't do a super job of it. And you can see it in some of the orcs, like there's brown splats mixed in with the armor. It is not tidy painting, but actually what you get as a base coat is really good, and that's something that I think I'll probably take away. Is, I mean, even with the yellow, I really like the yellow. I think it's pretty good, but for skinks, you know, for a model where you want to start with one solid coat or just the base coat, then actually it's probably a really cool way of doing it. The purple was beautiful, gave really good coverage, a bit dark, but actually as a starting point, really cool. So speed paints and contrast paints as a method of painting, let's how do we frame this? Let's use food. Everybody likes food. If getting your army painted, getting your team painted by somebody else is the equivalent of a takeaway, the speed paints are the equivalent of packet sauces. Okay, you can scratch paint your model using all the best ingredients, probably from Waitrose, and you can do a great job. You can base coat, you can shade, you can do all the stuff. Or you can grab a jar of Dolmio and an El Paso fajita kit and have your dinner done in half, a third, a quarter of the time. That's where the speed paint sits in. Some of it is going to be really good for cheating. Like that yellow is beautiful. Like, it is not great. It will not win awards, but it's good. And it took 15 seconds to chuck yellow on this model. So I think what you can do is you can use them as a foundation for your model. Like, you prime them white and then you go, right, what's my main color going to be on this dude? It's going to be green, it's going to be red, it's going to be yellow, it's going to be gray. Chuck the grey paint on, and it starts there, and then you can go in with normal paints and add. So if I was going to paint these orcs again, I would go, right, this dude, my armor scheme is going to be grey, paint the whole thing grey, and then use normal paints to add the flesh. The green skin is very bright and is hilarious, and it just, I mean, the fact that it doesn't come up on the green screen is brilliant. The bone was perfect. That one is a real paint. Okay, so when it comes to painting bones, you can just tidy up the edges in white, and instead of going one colour and then shade and then agrax and do all that stuff, you can just use this paint, I think, and then maybe do a little bit of edge highlighting on the top. You will get a nice gradient and a really nice finish. So the bone is a good one. They're all useful. The blue's quite dark, the purple's quite dark, but it'll make a really good base for it. But this, like contrast, you kind of have to paint around the edges, and it can be a bit tricky. But I do like the whole idea of painting a model one colour and then using that and adding up to it. Tidying up is going to be a bit challenging.